The Whispering Woods. It was supposed to be the perfect weekend. It was 4 friends, 2 tents, 1 secluded patch of forest, deep in the heart of the northern mountains. No reception. No noise. Just towering pines, a campfire, and endless stars. Perfect, thought Jake, as he tightened the straps on his backpack. The others were just as excited. Maddie with her instant coffee and horror novels, Chris lugging a cooler of beers, and Leah, the most outdoorsy of the group, armed with her topographic maps and survival gear. They left their cars at the last dirt road and hiked in, 2 miles through thick trees and misty trails. Leah had found the site online, a hidden clearing near a black-watered pond, surrounded by forests so old it looked almost prehistoric. By the time they arrived, the sun was slanting low, painting the woods gold. The trees leaned close together like they were whispering. Jake shivered. Not from cold. Creepy, isn't it? Maddie said, tossing her bag to the ground. Perfect, said Chris, grinning. He already had a beer cracked open. They pitched the tents, built a fire, and roasted hot dogs. As night fell, the forest seemed to close in tighter. The stars came out, brilliant, cold pinpricks against an endless black sky. At some point, someone started telling ghost stories. Maddie, of course. You know these woods are haunted, right? She said casually, twirling a stick in the fire. The flames threw shadows across her face, making her look older, more dangerous. Chris rolled his eyes. Everything's haunted according to you. No, seriously, Maddie insisted. There's this legend about a woman who lived out here. Hundreds of years ago. A witch, people said. She'd lure travelers off the path with whispers. You'd hear your own name, or the voice of someone you loved, calling you deeper into the trees. Jake laughed nervously. Yeah, okay. Totally normal camping conversation. Leah smirked but said nothing. She was staring out into the woods, her face oddly serious. Anyway, Maddie said, dropping the stick into the fire, if you hear someone call your name out there, don't answer. And definitely don't follow it. The woods crackled and shifted in the darkness. Somewhere far off, something snapped, a branch breaking. Chris threw another log on the fire. Sparks shot up into the air. They stayed up late, drinking and laughing and trying not to think about witches and whispering woods. Eventually, one by one, they drifted off to their tents. Jake woke sometime deep in the night, heart hammering in his chest. Something had woken him, a sound. He lay perfectly still, listening. The fire had long since gone out. The forest was pitch black. Silent, except for a whisper. Faint. So faint he thought he might have imagined it. Jake. He bolted upright. The voice was right outside the tent, soft, feminine, familiar. Maddie, he hissed. No answer. He unzipped the flap just enough to peek out. Nothing but darkness and trees. Another whisper, this time farther away, Jake. Over here. Definitely Maddie's voice. Definitely coming from the woods. He grabbed his flashlight, hands trembling. Maybe she was in trouble. Maybe something had happened. He stepped out into the freezing night. The beam of his flashlight cut through the blackness, trees and brush, and mist swirling low around the ground. Jake, the voice floated again, deeper into the trees. He stumbled after it. Branches clawed at his clothes. His breath came in clouds. The beam of light bobbed wildly as he pushed deeper and deeper into the woods. But no matter how far he went, he never seemed to get closer to the voice. Finally, he stopped, panting. "Maddie?" he shouted. Silence. He swung the flashlight around in a slow circle and froze. Right in front of him, maybe 10 feet away, was a figure. Not Maddie. Tall. Thin. Cloaked in something dark and ragged, blending into the trees. He couldn't make out a face, just a suggestion of features, blurred and shifting in the beam of light. The thing tilted its head, like it was studying him. Jake took a step back. Then another. The figure stayed still, but the woods seemed to close around him, branches twisting, roots writhing underfoot. Something brushed his hand, soft, almost tender. He looked down, a hand, impossibly pale, reaching out from the undergrowth. He screamed, dropped the flashlight, and ran. Back at camp, Leah sat bolted upright in her tent. Something had woken her. A sound. A whisper. Her name. But it wasn't Jake's voice, or Maddie's, or Chris's. It was her mother's. Her mother, who had been dead for 3 years. Leah, the voice drifted in again. Tears sprang to her eyes. Her body moved before she could think, unzipping the tent, stepping barefoot onto the cold ground. She stumbled toward the trees, heartbreaking. "Mom?" she whispered. A movement at the edge of her vision made her turn, and she saw it, a glimpse of someone disappearing into the shadows. Her mother's silhouette. She chased after it, stumbling over rocks and roots. The forest seemed to shift around her, warping and folding in on itself. Trails looped back. Trees leaned impossibly inward. The voice came again, weaker this time. "Help me, Leah." Through the trees, she saw a clearing, bathed in an unnatural blue light. At its center stood an ancient, gnarled tree, and hanging from its twisted branches were dozens of shapes. Bags? No, bodies. Swinging gently, whispering as they turned in the wind. And beneath the tree, something crouched. It wasn't human. It was thin and long, with too many limbs, hunched over like a spider, its face buried in the dirt. As Leah watched, paralyzed, it began to sing, a tuneless, broken lullaby. Her mother's voice, twisted and wrong. She stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face, and ran blindly into the woods. Morning came cold and gray. Maddie woke first, bleary and sore. The fire was just smoldering ash. Birds chirped overhead. Jake's tent was empty. Leah's too. Chris was passed out in his sleeping bag, snoring. Maddie crawled out and stretched, frowning. Maybe they'd gone for a walk? She called their names, no answer. Something cold slid down her spine. That's when she noticed the footprints, dozens of them, circling the camp, crisscrossing back and forth into the trees. Way too many to be Jake and Leah. Some of the prints were barefoot. Some were wrong. Long, clawed toes dragging through the dirt. Maddie backed toward the fire pit, heart hammering. Chris stirred behind her, mumbling. And then he screamed. Maddie turned and saw it. Jake's body, dumped just outside the camp. His eyes were wide open, staring in horror. His mouth was sewn shut with long, black thorns. There was a note pinned to his jacket with a splinter of bone. 3 words, written in something dark and sticky, "Do not listen." Maddie stumbled backward, gagging. Chris, still half asleep, didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. Something slithered out of the woods behind him, a long, spindly arm, snatching him by the neck. He barely had time to choke out a cry before he was yanked screaming into the trees. Maddie turned and ran. She didn't stop to grab her gear. Didn't stop to think. She sprinted through the forest, dodging trees and leaping over roots, branches slashing at her face and arms. All around her, the woods whispered. Voices, hundreds of them, calling her name, pleading, begging. Voices she recognized. Her friends. Her father, her mother. She shoved her fingers in her ears and kept running. The trees grew denser. The mist thicker. At some point, she realized the trail was gone. She was lost. Panic rose in her throat like bile. And then, up ahead, she saw it, a clearing. A glimpse of open sky. She burst through the trees and into the light, and froze. It wasn't a clearing. It was a pit. A vast, yawning hole in the earth, surrounded by ancient stones, carved with symbols that hurt to look at. From the depths of the pit came a smell, sweet and rotting. And something else, a song. High and thin and irresistible. Maddie felt her feet moving against her will, stepping toward the edge. Inside the pit, something was waiting. Something old. Something hungry. She fought to stop herself, but it was like being dragged by invisible hands. She teetered on the edge, peering down into the blackness. And a face looked back up at her. Not a human face. Too many eyes. Too many teeth. The last thing Maddie heard before she was pulled screaming into the pit was the voice of her mother, whispering in her ear, "Welcome home." They never found the bodies. Weeks later, a ranger stumbled on the abandoned camp. Torn tents. Bloodstains. The ashes of a fire long since dead. No sign of Maddie, Jake, Chris, or Leah. Only a single, blackened piece of paper stuck to a tree, fluttering in the breeze. Scrawled across it in jagged, frantic handwriting were the words, "If you hear them whisper, run." And deep in the woods, if you listen closely, you can still hear them. Calling your name. Waiting for you to answer. Waiting for you to follow.